Good morning, everyone. Please rise in body and or spirit, and we're going to sing Enter, Rejoice, and Come In without our music. Even if you don't know it, I promise you'll know it after a couple of verses. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. A little faster. Here we go. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Good morning. Please be seated.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to First Parish Brewster. We are a Unitarian Universalist welcoming congregation of people of diverse philosophies and beliefs, people of various cultures and races, sexual orientations, gender identities, abilities, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your path, may this be a place of rest and restoration on your journey. For those of you who may be first-time visitors this morning, welcome. I know I've met some of you this morning. A welcome on this morning, which we make sacred by our presence together. And let's all give a big wave to everybody streaming. Welcome to those, and welcome to people outside. I don't know if there are people outside, but we'll wave to them anyways. They may be outside. I'm Reverend Jessica Clay, happy to be welcoming you to the service this morning with Kevin Badanis, our music director, leading worship with me, and also leading the service are members of our LGBTQ Welcoming Congregation Committee. We also want to give a big welcome back to Lucy Banner, who Lucy is our interim pianist while we search for a regular, or a not interim pianist, but big thanks to Lucy for coming in and helping us out. And check your face. Do you have a mask on? Oh, let's say it with a little more enthusiasm, people. Do you have a mask on? Is it above your nose? Okay, let's please keep it that way. I would be very appreciative, as would everyone else. And check and see, do you have a name tag on? No. Well, visitors, there are name tags on the table out front. No pressure for you. But members, please do try to wear your name tags. I know for some of you, they're in this hallway and you're like, that's a far way to go get them. But it's the way that we extend our welcome. And our new name tags are coming. Check your cell phone. Is it silenced? Please silence it. We are an intentionally multi-generational community, so we do welcome the noises and movements and mirth that little ones bring. So if there happen to be children in the service today, we do welcome them. We want to extend that warm welcome. Our services typically go 60 to 75 minutes. If you need to leave before then, you're welcome to use the doors at the rear of the sanctuary. Our services are recorded and available on our YouTube channel midweek. And next week, you're invited to join us for a service led by Wilderness Sarechild. All are welcome at 10 a.m. Welcome to service this morning. It is so good to be together.
Good morning. This morning's service was planned by the LGBTQ Welcoming Congregation Committee. Our committee focuses on justice issues and legislation that affects the LGBTQ community by organizing vigils, providing financial support, participating in Cape-wide LGBTQ activities. Part of our work is also education of both our congregation and the larger community by sponsoring such events as lectures, workshops, and films. For many years before COVID, we sponsored Gala Ball, a dinner and dance party for Cape-wide LGBTQ neighbors and allies. We are always looking for new members and new ideas from the LGBTQ community, as well as our straight allies. Members of the LGBTQ Welcoming Congregation Committee, please stand and wave your flags. Please look for us on the plaza after the service for more information, and if anyone would like a flag, we have some flags here. So come up and take one. Come join us. We strive to dismantle transphobia and homophobia by openly and proudly being who we are and sharing our stories. Our goal this morning is to provide insight into some of the challenges and joys we and our families have experienced in coming out. And now, in the words of Linda Lee Franson, we light this flame to ignite our hearts and minds, the spark of knowledge that enlightens, the shimmering hope that burns, the blazing love that engulfs our actions, the bonfire of our commitment. We light this flame for those who celebrate themselves, who fear, who hope, who persevere, who stand on the side of love for all. We light this flame for those who have been ridiculed, that they may find peace, for those who have fought to marry, that they may celebrate, for those who live in uncertainty in the world, that they may have hope. We light this flame to renew our commitment that no one shall ever again suffer for the right to love. We light this flame to celebrate our kaleidoscope of diversity, working, loving, living on the side of love. For this, we light this flame.
Please rise in body and or spirit as we sing our opening hymn, number 34 in the gray hymnal, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. Free. Please be seated.
Will you join me in a moment of prayer? I invite you to settle into your seat, cast your eyes down or close them as we breathe together in this space. Our prayer this morning is adapted from a prayer by Reverend Jude Geiger, Teach Us to Remember Our History. After our prayer, we will have a moment of silence followed by Spirit of Life. Spirit of life, God of many names, source of hope, we come together at the end of another week. Some worn down by struggles of health, of home, or work. May we be a community that makes space for the sharing of joys and sorrows, angers and hopes, with grace and forbearance. In our nation's life, we pause this holiday weekend to remember the indigenous lives lost from the European colonization on what is now our soil. Teach us to remember our history. Though we cannot make amends for what has come before, may we learn from those ways, never to repeat them in our lives today. May we develop new ways of relating to neighbor and stranger without violence or coercion, deceit, or greed. On this Coming Out Day weekend, help us to continue to build brave space where people can fully claim their stories and their whole selves. Mother of Grace, help us to find a sense of humility where we have privilege and strength where we face oppression. In our struggles, we may learn compassion, and in our power, may we learn temperance. As a community of faith, may we be a safe harbor in a world that is often harsh towards difference. Challenge us to use our presence as a healing force for justice and equity. Knowing that although we have come far in the civil rights struggles of our times, there are many people who are still left behind, and the work of building the beloved community is just as pressing as ever before. Amen, and blessed be. We're going to have silence first, and then we'll sing.
Good morning. So, how do you tell a coming out story in 3 to 5 minutes? Because coming out is rarely just one story, and it often doesn't take place in a continuous arc. Both of those are true for me. My coming out was a process that began around Christmas 1983 with a drunken bar encounter and ended in 1986, when I started grad school in Chicago. But really, those dates aren't accurate either. I mean, it's not like concerns about my sexuality only began that night on the dance floor of Cheeks, or that I didn't have to keep coming out to family, new friends, new coworkers, and new business colleagues for years after. However, for simplicity's sake, I'll focus on those 2.5 years. I lived 2 of them in St. Louis, the first trying to forget about that bar encounter, and the second trying to figure out what it meant, and eventually what it would mean to come out in the early, truly bad days of the AIDS epidemic, as I moved my life back up to Chicago, a national hotspot for the disease, for graduate school. It was a terrifying time to be placing that particular stake in the ground. I was in my late 20s when the two local gay newspapers hit the streets every week. It wasn't the nightlife section I'd check out first with its ads for bars and events. It was the obituaries. To see who I might have known as a one-time date, a friend of a friend, who might have died in the past few weeks. But it was also an incredibly energized time as well that brought out a remarkable strength in the LGBTQ community when we took to the streets. We didn't just march for more drugs and research, though march for those we did. We started also coming out in large numbers. We started demanding equal employment and housing protections. And we stopped using euphemisms like roommate, and instead started demanding health benefits for the partners we could not yet marry. In the act of coming out, when we claimed our identities, I believe we changed the world, one friend, family member, and coworker at a time. This was a brave and sometimes dangerous act. People faced the loss of families and jobs and risked physical assault and death. This is a struggle that lives on for so many in the trans community, where HIV and AIDS remain significant health risks yet today. But there too, while much work remains to be done, the bravery of many in coming out and claiming their true selves publicly has led to notable advances in social acceptance. This is the power that lies in the act of making the personal political, and the political personal. Of stating out loud, we are all around you and we are not going away. Or, as we used to shout in those marches 3 decades ago, led on by the forever in-your-face AIDS coalition to ACT UP power, act up. We're here. We're queer. Get used to it.
Good morning. Interestingly, I'm going to talk about the same period, but from a different angle. When our welcoming congregation was planning this service, we didn't want to leave out the parents or the families of the LGBTQ community, because we too have a coming out process. And that's where I come in. I have 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter. our youngest son, Jim, is gay, and our daughter, Katie, is a lesbian. They both waited until they had graduated from college to come out to us. And that seems so odd today to you younger people, but back then it wasn't. And I know it took a lot of courage on Jim's part to do it. It was the mid-1980s. As Chuck just said, AIDS was raging. I was terrified for him. And fear and ignorance, I would say, was the custom of the country's attitude at that time. And I was no different. And so luckily, I had PFLAG to go to. And for those who are familiar with PFLAG, it's a wonderful organization that supports parents, families of lesbians and gays and transgender and questioning people. And not only was I educated there because they have wonderful publications, but it was the other families and the stories they told that made such a difference for me. So by that time, I really felt comfortable being an advocate and really an ally. So our minister at the time, Jim Robinson, asked me, he knew about my gay family, and he asked me if I would say a few words from the pulpit one Sunday, and I said yes. Well, unbeknownst to me, in the congregation that day was the editor of the Cape Codder newspaper. And so he came up to me afterwards and asked if he could print my words as an opinion piece or editorial. And I agreed. And I wasn't prepared for what came next. This was probably in the late 90s. And the next week when the paper came out, why, I was amazed. People came up to me everywhere, in the garden club, the library, even at church, to secretly confide in me that they too had a child who was gay, or a grandchild, or a nephew, or somebody. So I remember going back and talking to Jim about it, and he said, I remember his words so clearly, he said, there is a wet gray blanket of homophobia that hangs over this entire country. And until it's lifted, nothing's going to change. Well, as Chuck said, he was starting to lift things, but middle-class mothers like me in Connecticut were afraid of that too, let me tell you. And it was a time of great reflection, and also it was a time when just extraordinary organizations like GLAAD and Freedom to Marry and PFLAG, and very brave individuals like Linda and Gloria and hundreds of others started to say yes, that they weren't going to sit back any longer. And that did lift that wet gray blanket of homophobia, at least for great parts of this country. And to bring you back to my family, why, Jim is happily married to Bob, and they live in San Diego. Katie is happily married to Carol. They live in Brooklyn. And at the end of the summer, why, we all got together in Provincetown to celebrate our birthdays. So it's good. Thank you. I brought this up here because I want to point out on the back page, PFLAG has a PBS program Monday night that will tie in very nicely with our program today.
I'm a member of the Welcoming Congregation Committee. My name is Nancy Dutiel. This morning, the Welcoming Congregation Committee invites you to offer your support to the PFLAG, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, the chapter in Cape Cod. Today's split plate will be divided between First Parish and the PFLAG Scholarship Fund, named for UU activist Ann Torrin. Although the fund has awarded a total of $64,000 since it began in 2003, only one or two small scholarships can be awarded each year, due basically to lack of funding. And each year, between 3 and 12 well-deserving students are turned down, simply for lack of funds. Students chosen for the scholarships have clearly shown, through their actions and example, their strong advocacy and support for the LGBTQ community. They submit applications that include grades, references, transcripts, and their essays about the remarkable work that they have done. It is really not an easy process. And I can tell you that it's a most impressive group of young people. The PFLAG Scholarship is one of only 2 granted to students from CAPE organizations that specifically recognize LGBTQ and straight students who advocate to change attitudes and create laws and policies that achieve full equality for people who are LGBTQ. We invite you to help create opportunity for these highly qualified and active students by giving generously to the Cape Cod PFLAG Scholarship Fund. Doing so will help to assure that PFLAG's mission to provide support, education, and advocacy to parents, friends, families, allies, and members of the LGBT community is fulfilled. Thank you.
So there are a couple of ways you can give today. You can do text to give. The number is in your order of service. If you're streaming, you can give on our website. You can also give by check to First Parish Brewster, either mailed into our office or placed in the offertory basket, or cash. However you choose to give to the split plate today, know that your offering is gratefully accepted by this community and by this scholarship fund. The offertory will now be gratefully accepted.
Good morning, First Parish Brewster. My name is Karen Watson Etzel. My pronouns are she, her. I began the process of coming out when I fell in love with a woman 52 years ago. The year was 1969, the same year as the Stonewall riots in New York City. I knew nothing about the riots. I knew no other lesbians or gay men. What I did know is that at age 25, I felt like I had just slipped into a comfy pair of slippers, and my life would be changed forever. I was raised a cisgendered daughter of farming parents in Ashland, a small mill town in central New Hampshire. I had 4 siblings, and we attended the Catholic Church, my mother's religion. My closest friends growing up were always other girls. I attended public school, which I loved, dated boys, and was expected by others as well as myself to marry, have children, and live, quote unquote, a normal heterosexual life, although they didn't say that at the time. I did well in school, went off to Wellesley College and then to Smith College for my graduate degree, both all-women schools, by the way. And by 1969, I had become a feminist, and coming out as a lesbian was an aha moment of clarity. No looking back, no regrets. I had 2 long-term loving partners in my 30s and 40s, and by the time I turned 50, I was ready to be with my soulmate, Marilyn. We had a commitment ceremony here at First Parish 25 years ago and legally married in 2004, thanks to our good friends Linda and Gloria Bailey Davies. I feel like I have been a part of a momentous change in the world. I participated in some parts, supported other parts, and sometimes observed from a distance, eternally grateful for allies and those who were on the front lines. In preparing my brief coming out story today, I came to a conclusion I'd like to share with you. Coming out requires a commitment to live authentically. That is its challenges and its gift. Thank you.
We actually wrote these separate, so there's a little overlap. Good morning, I am Marilyn Watson Etzel. I am here with my wife, Karen. There. I've come out again. Every time I introduce myself and Karen as my wife, even though we've been together for 25 years, there's a piece of me inside that is still coming out. I think it's been ingrained in my DNA. I was closeted for the first 50 years of my life. As a teenager in high school and in college, I dated guys trying to fit in, doing what was expected socially, but it never felt comfortable. I liked the men, they were my friends, but I was physically attracted to women. My first teaching job was as a physical educator at Medway Junior Senior High School. I was in heaven. I was teaching and coaching varsity field hockey, basketball, softball. I loved teaching and being outdoors. I was skiing in Tuckerman's Ravine one spring where I met a woman I would spend the next 18 years with. She was coaching field hockey and teaching at Canton High School. I was teaching and coaching at Medway High School. She belonged to a ski club in North Conway, which had a lodge that slept 81 people, and I loved to ski. I later became the first woman president of that club, which was a big deal, and that was back in the 70s. I felt strong, powerful, confident, but we were closeted, even to all of our wonderful friends in the club, to our families, to our colleagues at work. Partly because we had no support system, the relationship was strained and we broke apart. And I can remember the pain of that breakup, having no one to tell. Later, I was with a woman 13 years younger than I for 5 years, and she was a teacher and coach also, and a little more open than I, but we were still closeted in our jobs. That relationship broke up, and Karen had broken up with her 5-year relationship. We met at a Super Bowl party, and Gloria Bailey Davies said, "Why don't you go to church with her?" She had been coming to First Parish, and I was a member, and so we started dating. And finally we knew what dating was, which that was never even a term in our lives back then. We went to Alaska together, and if ever you want to get to know anybody real quick, travel with them. And we knew right away that we had something very special. I was 52, Karen was 50. We came back, Sue Fleming and Sue Eitel, good friends who belong here to church, had a commitment ceremony celebrating the 25th anniversary of their being together, and they showed us the way. So after 2 years together, Karen and I decided to do it right this time and have our commitment ceremony here at First Parish to celebrate and honor our relationship. That was June 29th, 1996. We still call that our wedding. I was 54, Karen was 52. 125 of our dear family and friends came. Me, it was my coming out. I wrote a letter saying who I am, what I was doing, would they come, and I put it in the envelope with all the invitations that I sent out. Many of those were to my wonderful longtime ski club friends, and darn, they all came. I can remember putting the envelopes into the mailbox, and then the mailman picking them up and said, uh-oh, they've gone. It was the scariest but happiest and most fulfilling day of my life. I know that life is a journey, and I want to thank all of you at First Parish Brewster for being the supportive family that helped us, show us the way, that has held us and has celebrated us through all these years. To you younger folks out here, to be authentic and to live authentically, to be seen for who you are, is probably the greatest gift you can give yourself. Yes, I still remember what it is like being closeted. As a good friend told me, it's too dark in that closet. I am out. There's no going back. Here I am. I am Marilyn Watson Etzel, and I'm here with my wife.
Growing up at FPB, I was always taught that it doesn't matter who you love and you're accepted no matter what. And that really, it shaped my path in coming out. Being in such a loving environment, it made it really easy. And I'm so beyond grateful for that. The way that I came out just kind of came up in conversation. It was just one day in the kitchen with my grandma. Oh, I like girls and guys. Oh, cool, I didn't know that. And then that was that. And it just was never a big deal to me because I grew up knowing all sorts of people that are all sorts of things, and it was okay. And so now I'm here, and I'm here with my girlfriend, Abby, and I can introduce you all to her, and so I just wanted to thank FPB for giving me that environment and making it as easy as it was.
So if you didn't know before entering the sanctuary this morning, now you know that tomorrow is Coming Out Day. It's also Indigenous Peoples Day, but this service is focused on Coming Out Day. And some of you may not know that this day was founded by the activists Robert Eichberg and Jean O'Leary in 1988. And they picked this specific day because it is the anniversary of the 1987 National March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights. And as we've heard today, the truth is, for one who is LGBTQ, coming out is not something that you're once and done with. It's something that is done for the rest of your life. When we live in a society which assumes gender and sexual orientation, one constantly has to assert their place and say, I'm here. I'm more of the norm than our society would have you believe. And what's true is that heteronormativity, sexism, transphobia, and homophobia are also all internalized within all of us. It's in the air we breathe. We have all these messages, things we learned when we were young, and our work as adults is to unlearn them, to say, actually, that's not the truth, and to be gentle with ourselves in the process. At the age of 30, when I brought my girlfriend home, I lied to my parents and said we were just friends. And I could have told them, but I was afraid of their reaction and afraid of my own internalized homophobia. I'd always told my closest friends that I was bisexual, but for most of my 20s, I just dated men because it was easier. You don't have to come out. You're just assumed straight. I thought if I just continued to date men that I would never have to really come out. And then when I fell in love with that woman at 30, I began a very slow crawl out of the closet. It was very slow. And part of the reason it was so slow was as much about me owning my own internalized homophobia, as well as owning that you never know what people are going to say when you tell them. You never know how storekeepers are going to treat you. Still to this day, if I'm partnered with a woman and we go in a store and the shopkeeper is rude, I think, is it because I'm here with my girlfriend? Or is it because they're just rude? You never know how waiters, doctors are going to treat you. There's always this moment of holding my breath. Am I going to be accepted in the fullness of who I am? And you never know how those closest to you are going to react. If you're going to be met with acceptance or judgment. I was met with both. And when I came out publicly, first as bi, now queer, the people who weren't fazed and the people who didn't bat an eye and just said, okay, were, you guessed it, my UU friends. The people who said, hey, this is a more full expression of who you are and we support you. This is what we're about as Unitarian Universalists: acceptance, nurturing, and being able to allow for all of the possibilities that make up the human existence. And I want to specify today, for Coming Out Day and on every other day as well, that we lump together LGBTQ and T. Yet I hope today you note that gender and sexual orientation are two very different things. Neither of them is a choice. And our invitation is to realize that for some people who we would label as trans, they're not trans at all. They're just the gender that they are. And so when we're born, we're assigned a sex. A lot of you have said, because for those who are visiting, I'm pregnant, a lot of you have said, what are you having? And of course I want to say, a baby. But also you want to know the sex, because it gives some attachment to it, right? And yet it's all our projections of whatever that is. And so we're assigned a sex when we're born based on our body parts. But what science is telling us is that gender and the sex we're assigned at birth are two different things. And so for some people, the sex that they're assigned at birth is not their gender, and their gender may be something different or not on the binary altogether. They may be agender or genderqueer or non-binary. And for some of you, these are terms you're like, yeah, I know all this. And for others, you're like, I need to write these down because I don't know what these mean. And what this means for you is just a simple thing, asking someone, what pronouns do you use? And introducing yourself, like Karen said, my name is Karen, I use she, her pronouns. My name is Jessica, I use she, her pronouns. You don't have to understand what all the terms mean. They don't have to make sense to you, but we do invite you to accept them, to make space for them and welcome people who use something outside of the gender binary. And for some of you, queer was always, oh, sorry, I just skipped a whole sentence. So I just want to say, too, what cisgender means is that you identify as the sex you were assigned at birth is the gender you identify with. So I'm Jessica. I'm a cisgender female. I was assigned female at birth, and I identify as that way and use she, her pronouns. And for others, from an early age, their parents and they can tell the sex that was assigned to them at birth is not their gender. Their gender may be something different or not on the binary altogether. And sometimes it doesn't happen when they're young. It happens much later in life. And as I said, you don't have to understand. You just have to accept and welcome. Make space for them. And I know that for some of you, queer was always a derogatory word. Yet now it is being reclaimed. So someone can say their sexual orientation is queer, and someone else can say they are genderqueer. These are two separate things. And what that means for these people is something completely different. And guess what? There isn't one definition for queer. One Google search alone will give you at least 10. So the specific of what this means is actually not what this is about. What it is about is reclaiming the word and asking mainstream society to embrace the intersectionality of it, to embrace that it doesn't have a pat answer. There isn't one definition. We can't, for those of you who still have paper dictionaries, flip it open and there we get it. We want things to be clear, don't we? And as I said before, what this means for you in regards to gender is just a simple thing, asking, what are your pronouns? Mine are, and telling the person yours. You don't have to understand them, but you're invited to accept them, make space for them, and welcome them. And often what we say is, I just don't understand, it doesn't make sense, and then we make the person explain themselves. Much as the same for many gay people when they came out having to justify why they loved who they did. And the more welcoming we can be within this space and not ask people to justify their existence, the more we encourage each other to live into the fullest versions of ourselves. The more we apologize when we misgender someone and try again, we are working to make this a brave, welcoming space. And so for many of you, you know we're getting new name tags, which is very exciting. And for all who put pronouns on your new name tags, you are helping to make this a welcoming and brave space. Our theme this month is cultivating relationship. And for someone who is trans or non-binary, when they meet you and see pronouns on your name tags, especially if you are cisgender, they know that you are someone who prioritizes welcoming those on the margins. And for some, this is the first place that they can claim their gender. And we also know, same with sexual orientation. But with gender, we may have known them as a different gender or made assumptions about them based on all of society's norms that we breathed in for years. But within this place, sometimes they're taking those first movements towards a more truer version of themselves. And you all are a part of that. And as we've heard people's stories today, I truly never thought I would see equal rights for marriage in my lifetime, and here it is. And my hope is that also in my lifetime, we will stop debating gender and recognize that it's fluid. Recognize and affirm that each person has the right to tell us who they are, and our job is to listen, affirm, and support, not to argue about semantics of language or our own understandings of biology, but to listen, affirm, and support. So, on this eve of Coming Out Day, I say if you are trans or genderqueer, if you are queer, gay, straight, or bi, asexual, pansexual, you don't have to justify yourself to me. And I want you to know that your life matters. I will hold this sanctuary for you and help to create it in the world. Because of the people who came before me, because of the lesbian and gay people in the UUA who pushed for welcoming congregations, because of congregations like this, who was the first welcoming congregation, because people made a way for me to feel supported in my living out the fullest expression of who I am, I'm committed to this for you. And you don't have to out yourself to me, or anyone for that matter. Your identity can be wholly private. It's up to you to decide when and where to disclose. And me doing this, up here preaching this sermon, isn't going to rid me fully of all my internalized phobias and isms, but it's part of the path towards creating and cultivating relationship. What if we lived in a world where we asked gender pronouns, we didn't assume heteronormativity, and accepted that the only norms were that there aren't any norms? Can you imagine it? Cultivating relationship. That is what we do when we come here, when we sign the membership book, when we pledge, when we continue to say yes to each other. We are creating brave space not only for ourselves, but for others in this place and in the world. This week, may we create space for each other in this place and in the world. Make space for coming out or staying in the closet. Make space for people to live out loud the fullest expression of themselves. May we answer the call of love over and over again and say yes to each other in all of our differences. Are you in? Yes. All right, amen.
Our closing hymn is in the teal hymnal. It is listed as Standing on the Side of Love, and it is 10:14. In an effort to be more inclusive, the words were changed a few years back, and now we sing Answering the Call of Love wherever you see in the music Standing on the Side of Love. Please rise in body and worship. The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision we find. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love.
All right, for our benediction today, I ask you to put one hand on your heart and one hand on your throat. May your words that you speak as you go out through the world answer the call of love. We're not grabbing our throats, we're doing a gentle caress. Gentle caress of this which helps you to make your way in the world. And if you have words that have been silenced, may you make space, make friends in this community with whom you can share those words. And then feel that heart beating underneath your hand. May that guide you on your true path towards being the fullest expression of who you are. And may you help others as they discover their own way as well. Go in peace, dear ones. Go in love. Amen.